All right. So this video will cover real property and we'll cover disposals. And real property students usually do pretty well with. It's disposals that find their way into error. So real property, because the amounts tend to be large and the lives are longer, the half-year and mid-quarter conventions simply don't apply. Instead, there's a mid-month convention. And the table does all the mid-month calculations for acquisitions, for when you place it in service. Obviously, you can see that the table has 12 columns. That's because there's one for each month. So, for example, if Michelle places in service an apartment in May of 22 at a cost of $100,000, then you'd think all we have to do is go to the May column for the first year. But, we always got to be careful to make sure that we are picking the right table. So an apartment is a residential property, so got to make sure that we pull the right table in. There we go, the residential property. And you can see our depreciation factor is 2.273, so multiplied by out, and you can see that's the depreciation we take on the building in the first year. Something to look out for is the rates later on in the year. These are stated as percentages. So when it says 0.455%, that's really 0.00455. And sometimes I see students, mistakenly move that decimal point around where it shouldn't be. So just be aware. All right. So how does real property affect the convention test? Hopefully you recall from our discussion on the convention test a few videos ago. It does not at all. You ignore real property in both the numerator and the denominator of the test. It's simply ignored. So if Beth placed the following in service, during 2022, and we were calculating the convention test, we would say there was nothing placed in service in the fourth quarter because that building in the fourth quarter is real property. And so it's ignored because it's on the mid-month anyway. So why would we put it under a convention test? We would not. So we know that the table builds in either half year, half quarter, or mid-quarter, or half month, mid-month convention. For the year, quarter, or month, we place it in service. And that is super convenient, meaning we don't have to apply any sort of 1/2 or 1/2 of a quarter or 1/2 of a month, whatever it might be. The table just takes care of it. But as we discussed earlier, it does not do that for disposals because the table has no idea when you're going to dispose of a property. You could do it in the first year, the second year, the third year, the 8th year, the 35th year. It's just there's no way of knowing. But what we do know is the rules require us to apply whatever convention we used at acquisition when we placed it in service. We must apply the exact same convention in the year of disposal. And so that means we have to do something with those table amounts because they're going to be incorrect. They're going to represent a full year's worth in every period except the first and the last. So if we have a half-year convention when we place it in service, we need to apply the half-year convention when we take it out, etc., etc. So Gordon Sumner placed in service a 7-year asset in 2020, costing $10,000 for use in a trade or business. There's no bonus depreciation or 179. We'll get to those in a future video, but this segment, chapter 8. He sold the asset in 2022. What is his 2022 depreciation deduction? So we got a 7-year asset for $10,000. We got half-year life because half-year convention was used when it was placed in service. So there's our 2020 depreciation, right? We take 14.29. There's 2021. But if we use 17.49 for 2022, the problem is that's a full year's worth of depreciation. And that's not the correct amount. We have to apply the half-year convention to that. So we simply take that amount and multiply it by half, right? So they're only going to get half of that amount. 10,000 times 0.1749 times 1/2 is only $874.50. And it's as simple as that, really. So Stuart Copeland, 7-year asset, $10,000, 2020. Sorry, I knocked over the garbage can in my office. No bonus, no 179, but the mid-quarter convention was used when it was placed in service. And let's assume that it's the third quarter. Okay, so sold again in 2022. How are we going to calculate 2022's depreciation? So here's the third quarter convention. And so when we think about what we did for year one, well, there's year one, 2020, right? There's year two. and here's year 3. And we know that just year 3 is wrong, right? The issue is he took it out of service in the first quarter. So does that mean we should switch over to the first quarter table? And the answer is no. Once you're in a column, you stay in the column. So instead you'd say, all right, well, the full year would be 18.22%, but I don't get a full year. I have to treat it as if I get half the quarter for the quarter in which I take it out of service. Well, I took it out of service in the first quarter in January. So that's half a quarter divided by 4 quarters during the year, or 0.5 divided by 4. So there I get 10,000 times 0.1288 times 0.5 divided by 4. 227.75 is my depreciation. So you can see that sometimes students might make a mistake with this. So let's go over some iterations, right? I have a 10,000 assets, 7-year placed in service, disposed of this year in Q1. So just so we can kind of graphically represent what I just spoke of. When did we take it out of service? Well, we took it out of service in Q1. So we know we get half a quarter's depreciation in Q1. How much do we get for Q2 through Q3 and Q4? Well, the answer is 0 because we no longer own the asset. We disposed of it in Q1. So we get no depreciation for the following quarters. That's how we get the 0.5 divided by 4. So what if instead we disposed of it in Q2? Well, that means we get a full quarter for Q1, but we'd only get half a quarter for Q2, the quarter of disposal. And naturally, we get 0 for the following quarters. So if I take it out of service in Q2, then my ratio is 1.5 divided by 4. And you could do that for each of the future quarters as well. There are only 4 quarters. So if I took it out in Q3, I'd have 1, 1, 1 half, and 0. And of course, if I took it out in Q4, I'd have 1, 1, 1, and 1 half. Okay. And that's really it. So that's going to end this video, a nice quick one. We'll go on to our next parts, which are accelerated forms of depreciation next.